Welcome to Policy RX with the Rock Doc. I'm Eric Murdoch, coming to you from the doctor's office in Estes Park, Colorado. Today we're chatting with Connor Herson, and this is kind of a tough intro because Connor's accomplished so much in his climbing career. He's been climbing probably since for his entire life. Currently, he's a Black Diamond and La Sportiva sponsored athlete. He's had an incredible last couple years in Yosemite. I mean, between free climbing the nose in a day, establishing hard routes on the rostrum and Tuolumne, red pointing the magic line, red pointing meltdown, and doing the first free ascent of the triple direct on El Cap. And that's just a few of his accomplishments. We're just honored to have Connor here to chat about his perspectives on climbing, the future of climbing, and what Access Fund is doing. So thanks so much for joining us, Connor. And I know you're leaving for your Yosemite this afternoon. So thank you for making the time to speak to us.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks so much for having me. I'm psyched to chat with you guys.
Nice. Let's get into it. So, as you know, a lot of young climbers get into climbing now, obviously through the climbing gyms and are really involved in competition climbing. And I know you were involved in that also. But for some reason, it seems like traditional climbing kind of sunk its teeth into you early on. And I'm wondering if you can kind of talk about like how did that all happen? Like a lot of climbers kind of use their skills that they learn in competition climbing later in life when they start venturing outside and doing adventures. But you really jumped into it early, and I want you to sort of explain to us, like, how did that all work, and what is it about this adventure climbing, traditional climbing that really appeals to you?
Well, I think when I was younger, it was definitely not like I wouldn't call it like a first priority. I definitely valued it a lot, but I was also in the competition scene and the gym scene, and so that also was one thing that I kind of gained as I got a little bit older. But that said, I've always really, really loved just a day out in the mountains, in the valley and the high Sierras, just on a long multi-pitch. And I think part of that is access. I mean, a lot of my peers in the gym growing up, most of them, if they did climb outside, it would mostly be bouldering and sport climbing. And uh, they just didn't have the same opportunity I did just growing up in a climbing family and having my parents just take me out to, the Hulk, to Tuolumne, to the Valley, and just to spend kind of a childhood growing up there, I think was kind of a huge privilege. And I think it's really shaped my values today, where like, even today, like I was actually reflecting a few days ago that like, I think just having, quote, easier days in climbing in general are just so helpful. And I think honestly undervalued, where just like last week, I took a break. I was, trying some hard projects in Yosemite and just took a day to randomly climb Astroman with a friend just for fun, no particular reason. And it was such a fun day. And I think those days I value them so highly. And I think I get that value from my upbringing in the climbing world, and really just being able to spend time in these beautiful places and climb on these routes, I think has been a huge privilege. And like, yeah, I'm sure like a ton of the other gym kids, if they had had the same access I had, they would kind of be in the same spot I am.
Yeah, that's it's interesting that you're pushing the limits and the future of climbing, but you also have a real appreciation for sort of what's there. And the Access Fund has put a lot of work into making sure that these existing routes that you're doing and that are in wilderness and on El Cap are allowed to be climbed into the future. And you're really benefiting, from the fact that we're allowed to do this incredible thing. And then at the same time, you're sort of looking to the future and testing yourself and finding new adventures and doing some hard days. Well, lots of hard days, obviously, also. And I'm wondering where you think where the future is going to go for climbing. What do you think it's going to look like in 20 years? And why is this idea of like constantly finding new lines and finding new challenges? Why is that really important for America's climbing culture?
Well, I think, I mean, to answer that last point, climbing is, I mean, one of the cool parts about climbing is there's always something new. There's always this like novel problem solving element to it. Whether you're on a boulder in the gym, whether you're on El Cap, whether you're in the middle of nowhere trying to figure out where the hell this climb is, right? It's going to be something new and different every time. And I think, yeah, so 20 years from now, it's going to be that exact same thing. And so part of that is developing new areas, putting up new climbs. And I think the other huge crux 20 years from now is we've seen recently, like in climbing gyms, just this huge explosion in popularity of the sport, right? And right now, most of those crowds are kind of just in the gym, but I think they'll be venturing outdoors in the next few years. And I think one of the big challenges of the next few years is going to be kind of how to sustainably give all these people access to the sport and let them, enjoy outdoor climbing in a way that doesn't put too much strain on the areas, but also like kind of lets a broader portion of the climbing population see what outdoor climbing is all about, you know? And I think
Yeah.
there's it's going to be it's going to be interesting to see that that balance at play.
And when you're out looking, when you're in Yosemite and in the
Mhm.
valley and in Tuolumne, and you're sort of looking at these walls, I know you've done some routes like the Pirates Cove that was previously established but never red pointed, right? What are you looking for, like for new adventures when we sort of are working to protect the ability of the next generation to be creative and to find new lines? Like, what are you thinking about when you're out in Yosemite, besides the days when you're doing easy days in quotes? What do you think you can accomplish? What do you think you're going to be able to accomplish in the next decades?
I mean, I'm definitely like really, really eager to kind of start developing my own vision. I mean, a lot of the first attempts I've done have been routes that people have either been scoping or,
Mhm.
they've been existing projects. And I'm really excited to kind of like find my own lines and kind of be able to, kind of do some exploring of my own and finding some, yeah, kind of finding these next generation lines that, maybe people didn't find before, or maybe they didn't think were possible before, and really just kind of asking the question of like, what is possible to be climbed? And I think when I'm looking at a climb in an area like Yosemite, I think a lot of the question is like, well, is it? I think a lot of it is going to be difficulty, but I think a lot of it's also quality and like location. And like, I think I would rather establish like a really good route than just a really, really hard route. And I think I want that to kind of continue to be a guiding force in my climbing yeah, through my entire career.
So exciting to watch what you're up to. You're obviously having a high point. Do you? And I've heard this in interviews with you before. Like, are you worried you're peaking too early at 15 when you pre-con the news? But that's clearly not happening. I mean, what are your thoughts on sort of like you continuing to push yourself? I'm all for your leave of absence. By the way, I'm glad you're
Thanks.
doing it. But you've got a lot on your plate.
Yeah.
Like how are you juggling all these things at the same time?
Well, I think it definitely like I think what I've found recently has been really helpful is rather than just trying to do both at the same time, kind of be alternating between the two worlds. So
Hmm.
uh, this is the second year where I've taken fall off from school, and so then I'm in school from January through June, and then from like the second half of June through December I'm climbing, and I think being able to alternate between the two has been really really helpful. Where like I'm able to kind of just avoid burnout in both worlds. And that's been really, really good. And it's allowed me to kind of keep progressing and keep a love of both worlds, really. Where, I just this morning, I got into a master's program at Stanford. And just last week, I've been kind of checking out this new futuristic line on Leaning Tower in Yosemite. And so it's cool to kind of have that continuing motivation in both worlds. And I don't really see my career in either world ending particularly soon. And yeah, it's funny. It's like I joke about, I have joked in the past, like, oh, I peaked at 15 on the nose, but like, I did go back this year and do it in like a day. And uh, it felt a lot better. So that was very satisfying. And I think thinking about it in terms of peaking versus not, I think is not necessarily the most productive conversation. That I'm not. I'm trying to kind of step away from that now and just, I want to keep improving, obviously, and I want to keep just finding climbs that push me in some way and climbs that inspire me, more importantly. Yeah.
Think that's a healthy outlook. And congrats on your success at,
No,
at
thanks.
Stanford. It's really impressive. One thing I wanted to talk to you about again about the Pirates Code is that at
Hmm.
Access Fund, we got a lot of calls and we're really psyched up because you happen to be wearing a purple Access Fund shirt on the send, and that was highlighted in the video, so people were really pumped up about it. It was just like an authentic promotion of the Access Fund, whether you're intended or not. I seem to think you just picked it off to the floor because it was the closest thing to you. But what are your thoughts on the benefits of the Access Fund? What are the things that the Access Fund is doing that's connecting with you most and makes it feel like it's an important organization to the future of climbing and to what you're up to?
I mean, it's funny. I think you might have been right in that it might have just been like what I had that was clean. But it is true. Like I kind of only want to wear a shirt, apparel from my sponsor if I'm going to be shooting on a route, which I knew that day I would be shooting. But when I picked up the Access Fund shirt, I thought, well, this is cool. Like I do respect Access Fund. I really like the work they're doing. I'm really, really psyched to be promoting them. And so, I guess for Access Fund for me, there's really like everything that Access Fund does has kind of resonated with me. I can just like growing up, a huge portion of my climbing growth and progression has been at Jailhouse. And Jailhouse, we really have access to it today. We can really climb there because of an easement that Access Fund helped negotiate with the landowners. I want to say that was like 20 years ago or so. I don't remember the exact year. And yeah, like really that sort of negotiation and acquisition of this like land easement has basically allowed me to almost grow up climbing at this sport crag 2 hours from where I live. And I think that kind of work of, buying climbing areas and securing access to them has been super valuable growing up. At the same time, I've done trail work and crag cleanups with the Access Funds that, uh, I mean, have at the same time been like super cool because I feel like I'm like making a direct difference if you like compare how you leave a crag after a day of trail work or crag cleanup compared to how you got there that day. You can already see such a huge improvement, but also just like how much work it is. And it's really kind of given me a huge level of respect for that. And then most recently, in the past year, what has really resonated with me, uh, in terms of what Access Fund is doing has been, this work about not just climbing areas but protecting public lands in general, where Mike Lee puts a provision into this big bill that's going through Congress to sell off just like a ton of public land. Like I think it was like millions of acres, if I recall correctly. And Access Fund really just kind of spearheading this charge to mobilize climbers all around the world on the ground to sorry, I think I've said all around the world, I meant all around the US. Um, but mobilizing these climbers to, give calls to their local representatives and senators, to write emails, to organize, to get other people involved, and just like, ultimately it was successful. That provision was removed from the bill. Unfortunately, the bill still passed, but that's a different story. But I think, I love taking care of and maintaining access to these climbing areas, but I think compared to just our public lands as a whole, right? Like our public lands are so valuable, and I think we cannot and should not put like a monetary value on them, right? And so trying to sell them off, trying to get rid of them, I think is a huge mistake. And I really respect that Access Fund is willing to just put up the fight to really retain access. And, whether this is through, yeah, this recent legislation, whether it's through the roadless rule, I really respect that work as well. So I don't know, kind of a non-answer because I didn't really pick one aspect of Access Fund's work, but I think it's just because really everything that Access Fund does resonates with me a lot as a climber and just as a general person, as an American. I think it just really resonates with me.
Well, thanks so much for that. Yeah, we're trying hard to buy climbing areas, to negotiate good access, and to protect these places for the future. So really appreciate your words on that. So you're heading to Yosemite. Today is the 6th of November.
Hmm.
We're in the longest government shutdown in the history of the United States right now. Now, when
Right.
this airs in December, hopefully the shutdown will be over and the government will be up and running, right? And as you go to Yosemite, are you concerned at all about what you're going to see, or are you planning to do something different? I mean, there's some things happening, and I'm wondering, does it matter at all to you as you launch out, into this climbing season in the valley?
Absolutely, it does matter. I mean, it's it is a little bit weird going to Yosemite. 'Cause I was there a few weeks ago, also
Okay.
during the shutdown, and they're really trying to maintain this sort of appearance of business as usual, where really the only thing that you see from a visitor perspective is there's no one at the entrance station. Then you go in and the shuttles are running and the stores are open and the campgrounds are open, but behind the scenes, I've talked with some rangers, I've talked with other climbers who work in the park, and things are not all they seem to be on the surface, right? It's understaffed. It was already understaffed as is going into the shutdown. And now it's just like the crew is it's really a skeleton crew keeping the park running. And so and since the shutdown, there have been some substantial crowds in the park in terms of visitors. And a part of me does wonder, like, should I be visiting at all given the shutdown going on and given like that it's really putting a strain on the park itself and the people who run it. But I don't know. I think, and I don't have a good answer to that. But yeah, I think to answer your question, yes, the shutdown is definitely on my mind when I'm visiting the park. And I think it's, the rangers that are still there and the workers that are still there are really just putting in incredible work to minimize just the strain on the land. Because, at the end of the day, when there's a lot of people visiting a place, it takes a lot of people to uh, maintain it and make sure that, these crowds don't ultimately have a huge impact on the land, or at least minimizing what that impact is.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conundrum that you mentioned, but I think in the end, having all climbers, and especially climbers who have a big audience and can share their stories like you, I think it's really important that we continue to show how important and how valuable these places are. If we stop going, perhaps they won't be seen as important. And I think
Exactly.
telling the stories and showing that these are important for and health and wellness and local economies and all the different things that come from our public lands is really valuable. So I really appreciate you going to these places, doing incredible things and telling your stories because you've got a really interesting platform right now.
And I think also like one thing is as climbers, I like to think of us as pretty good stewards of the land. Again, this could be a biased opinion, but through events like the Yosemite facelift, where um, every year climbers come together and remove thousands of pounds of trash from the park, I think through events like this, climbers have shown that we really are stewards of the land. And I think kind of broadening uh, that perception by showing we are stewards of the land is really, really important. And so I think that really means, for all the climbers visiting the valley right now to just take extra care of the place. I mean, every time we visit public lands, it's important to take care of the lands, right? But I think visiting, especially now, right, when it's really a skeleton crew of employees there, I think it's super, super important to just be very careful about, minimizing our impact there.
Yeah, I agree with that. And, I'm really proud that Access Fund is doing some things right now to help make sure that these areas are being stewarded well. Like, for example, in Indian Creek, our climber stewards are actually restocking the bathrooms with toilet
Really?
paper. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And and it's like everyone's got a role. It might seem like a little thing, but it's significant. And I think that story actually people are like, oh, that's legit. They're really
Yeah.
putting their money where their mouth is. So I
Yeah.
agree with you, and I hope that while you tell your story about climbing during this period, you'll sort of weave these messages in because it's interesting that you're thinking not just about you climbing the hard route. You have a broader perspective on climbing and public lands, and it's really valuable for a pro climber to have that perspective, I think. Let's wrap this up, and I want you to sort of tell us what you got. What are your plans for the near future? You're headed to Yosemite. Can you
Yeah.
share any of your plans or your projects? And you
I
don't have
guess
to.
it's interesting that you were talking about, the kind of looking forward into climbing in the next 20 years and what that means in terms of first ascents, in terms of new routes. And I'm actually currently checking out it. It's an old project from Todd Skinner, but it still hasn't been free climbed on Leaning Tower. And I think it, climbing on it. I've been thinking a lot about kind of the future because it is really kind of a futuristic line. And it won't be one that I send this year, maybe even next year, but it's cool to kind of put in the original time, some reconnaissance missions, if you will. And so I've been climbing on that a little bit. I kind of just started checking out and I'm pretty psyched on it. But there's so many climbs in Yosemite that I still haven't even tried. And like there's so much on my plate. Like every time I go into a valley season, my tick list, like my list of climbs that I'm psyched on. I don't have like a physical list; it's just like in my head. But this list of climbs is like it's like more than like 5 seasons worth of climbs if they were 5 very productive seasons. And I go into every season like I want to do this and I want to do that. And I think that's what's so cool about an area like Yosemite is there's just so much rock and so many established routes that I really do feel like a kid in a candy store there.
So exciting. I can't wait to sort of see what you're able to accomplish. And the Access Fund is we're working as hard as we can to make sure you can still get out there and
Oh,
do these things. And we're really rooting for you. Um, so this we're recording this obviously in November, but we're gonna launch this thing in December during the match campaign, and one of your sponsors, big sponsors, Black Diamond, is actually matching every donation to the Access Fund during this sort of donation season, one for one, so up to $80,000. So if folks are listening and they're inspired by Connor and they want to make a donation, they get doubled the value, and Black Diamond is so generous for making that happen. So we really appreciate that. We really appreciate talking with Connor, and we're holding him up. He's got his car packed outside and ready to go. So we're excited to see what you can accomplish. Thanks so much for joining us. It was really great to meet you.
oh, thank you. Yeah, thanks for having me on, and I really appreciate the work you guys do. It really is impactful. Wouldn't have had like without the Access Fund, I couldn't have had nearly the climbing childhood that I've had. And yeah, I just really appreciate the work you guys do. Appreciate Black Diamond for matching donations.
Take care, Connor. Take care,
Okay,
everyone,
thank you.
and we'll see you at the next episode of Policy RX.